Yeah?
Oh yeah,
Yay.
love it every time.
We're on.
Nice, that was my first go.
Yes,
Nailed it.
absolutely. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of AusTableTalk. My name is Luke and I'm at the table with Kristen and Emerson. Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening, folks.
You know, I think I can just about say that in my sleep at this point. Yep.
Yeah.
But still, even though I know you both...
Get Steve to say it next week because he's not here this week.
That's true.
Steve.
Still, every time I say it, my brain goes a little bit blank just before I say the names, and it's like I have no idea who I'm here with. So, like, I know you both very well, and still I have that moment.
Names are
That
just
happens.
words that mean people.
Yes, let's write that on a bumper sticker.
Just-
names
names
are
are
just
That's
words.
going on the
Names
board.
are
We'll put
just
that on the board.
names are just sounds, really, that represent a person.
Yep.
So,
Yes,
yeah,
they are.
It's crazy.
Okay. I just feel really sorry for our audience, so let's just move past that and talk about the fact that this week we're going to the second episode in our series. We are talking about fruits of the Spirit. And before we get into that properly, there's a couple of things we like to do first. One is sharing a reel or some social media post that we have grasped through the course of the week, and we might as well start right there. There's one. I can't take credit for this one. I put this one on the list, but I can't take credit for it. Matt Libke is the one that sent it to me. So Matt, thank you. Matt's over there off camera checking our audio. So thank you, Matt. But yeah, let's play this. I think this is great.
I want to ask you this question. It's a little deep question. I haven't fully fleshed out my answers. I kind of hide my opinion on it because it's better to tie an anchor to my neck and drop me in the abyss than to ever put people in the wrong direction of the Lord. So I pray he forgives me if I'm speaking incorrectly. But the more I read the scripture, the more I truly do not believe that hell's eternal.
No, it's not. You're gone eternally.
Yeah.
You disappear. You're burned up.
A lot of
But why
people don't
would
agree with us.
Why would a loving God torture you forever for a lifetime that only expanded 7 decades?
You know, it's so funny. One day I was sitting in the neighborhood and I was really debating this in my head. And I'm like, God, I feel so bad. But I was walking around the neighborhood and I was crying out to God. And I said, God, forgive me. I don't know if I worship you because I love you or if I'm just terrified of you.
Right.
And I just don't know. And I feel like that's bad. I wouldn't want my wife to marry me. I want when I come home, or open arms, hug me, kiss me, not shaking because like
Sure.
I'm going to whip her butt if she doesn't love me.
But when
right
you
away.
get to know God and you get to understand his character, you recognize why he does what he does. Why would he take you to heaven if you wouldn't be happy there for eternity?
Yeah.
Now that would be hell.
I was walking in the neighborhood, and after I asked that question, I saw Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on people's doors. I asked that question out of the sky, and I looked down. I just see people knocking on the door. And in my heart, not an audible thing, God goes, go ask them that question. And I went to go ask them that question, and she answered me in a way that was so profound, and it stuck with me. She looked at me, and she says, what is the wage of sin? I said, death. She goes, there you go. She goes, why would your God collect more? If you're not having Jesus pay your debt, then you're gonna die. It's death. It's just gone. It's not torturing for 1 billion years, a trillion years. And again, I'm so new at reading the gospel, so forgive me, God, if I speak against you, but it just doesn't seem like the God that I'm reading. I want to ask you this question.
Shout out to George Janko. He's on a journey.
Yeah, he is. He sure is. And I mean, there's been so much. I mean, he's spoken to a lot of different people, you know, since he started his own podcast. I've got great respect for the openness that he has to adjust, like course correct, as he learns new things.
Yeah.
That takes courage.
Yeah, and I respect that he says he puts this big disclaimer like I really could be
Very wrong.
very wrong, and I pray that the Lord forgives me if I steer someone in the wrong direction, which I think is a very important thing to say. I think that like we should say that too. Like
100%.
100%, we like don't take our word for anything. Study it for yourselves, and
for people that haven't necessarily been exposed to some of these ideas that he's talking about, you know, the question of what happens when you die is one of those universal human things.
That's
you know,
right.
we've talked about it on the show, but it's been a really long time. It's probably something that we should come back to soon. But the Bible, at least from my perspective or our perspective, is really clear about the fact that hell is not an eternal place of suffering, because as it was shared there, the wages of sin is death. It's not a permanent agony. It is a state of nothingness, right? It's the ending of life, not the continuation of it.
Yeah.
And I believe that is the only way that a loving God makes sense, because I don't see how a God of love could live for eternity in bliss with the people that have chosen Him, while like on the other side somewhere, all of the other people that He created are suffering. Like, I don't think that there is any version of reality where God could be that God. So, but
I think any the first lie that Satan ever told was, "You shall not surely die." And any doctrine that says that the wages of sin is not death, be that the idea that a holy person will go to heaven when they die, therefore they're not really dead, is a lie of the devil, and that the wicked will burn for eternity, will be tortured for eternity. Well, that's not death. And so this lie, any doctrine that says that you don't die, is the lie of the devil. And it's the first lie he ever told, and it's the one that he continues to tell. Because he's trying to convince the universe that, oh, no, my way's okay. You don't die if you sin. Because that's the whole thing that tears his argument apart. Like, oh, if you go down Satan's way, then you're going to die. And he's saying, no, you won't die, you won't die, you won't die. And he's got all of these ideas in people's heads that know that wages of sin is not death.
Yeah. I would go so far as to say
But it is.
the doctrine, yes. I would go so far as to say that the doctrine of eternal hellfire has done more to create atheists than virtually anything else that Christianity has ever espoused, because there are so many people that I know that they point to that as their moral high ground to disbelieve. Yeah. And rightly so. Like, I actually agree with those people. If that was true, that would be problematic to the view of God. But anyway, I mean, he references the Jehovah's Witnesses in there, and they're not the only people that believe it. I mean, we're not Jehovah's Witnesses, and we believe it. But
they don't. Oh.
Sorry?
I didn't realize they didn't believe it.
They also are annihilationist. They believe that there is like the final annihilation of evil.
And they also believe that you go to heaven at the second coming, not when you die.
Yeah.
So we have that very much in common with them.
So, but there's a growing number of people that are in mainstream like evangelical Christianity that are taking on this position. There's a great movie. I haven't seen it for years. I'd actually love to go back and rewatch it. Helen, Mr. Fudge. Did you guys ever see that?
I watched that one.
Yes,
Good
such
film.
a good movie. So if you're interested in this topic, by all means check that out. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting one for us to just highlight.
That's cool.
One of the other things that we like to do at the top of the show is to have a section we call Tribe Tales, because you guys are the Table Tribe, and we love to hear from you. One of our favorite things, like the big thing that we would love for people to do as a result of listening to the show, is going and creating their own groups, having conversations like we have here, and spiritually growing and building community together. And we want to hear about your experiences, and if you're doing that, and especially if something we've said has inspired you to go and do that, we would love to hear from you guys. Send us a selfie or a video or something. We would love to be able to share that on the show. We haven't received anything this week, so if you would like to help us out with that, next week is always free. So please feel free to send us through something. If you want to do that, you can do that on our social media accounts, which we're AusTableTalk everywhere. But also you could send us an email, hello@austabletalk.com.au. So anyway, the ad is over. Let's get to the topics. All right. So, fruits of the Spirit. We are talking about joy.
Banana.
Banana? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a whiteboard. Well,
We do.
technically it's a glass board. It's a black glass board. But on that, we tend to throw ideas and pieces or fragments of ideas for us to ruminate on as we prepare for these episodes.
I scribbled.
Yeah, and Kristen made it. No, you didn't scribble. You made art, is what you did. That's awesome. So, but we have a banana at the top because we're talking about fruit of the Spirit, and what says joy more than a banana?
Exactly. Banana's a joy. No, I was just looking for a yellow fruit and I couldn't draw mango.
Well, banana's an easy one.
Yeah.
Oh, let's just kick it off with a Bible verse.
I love how you highlighted it in yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just did that so I could find it easily.
That's great.
But yeah, anyway. Just to kick off a discussion,
Go for it.
I thought I'd just read this one.
Great.
This is David writing in Psalms 16, verse 11. You will show me the path sorry, start over. You will show me the path of life. In your presence is the fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. And
what is joy?
yeah. Yeah. So he says, at your right hand is the fullness of joy, right?
Yeah.
So in your presence, in the presence of God, you cannot but be joyful, right? And then he says, he equates it with pleasures forevermore. And I don't know, I sort of like, what do you guys think of that? Because
Yeah.
I think that joy is not dependent on pleasures forevermore. And so
That's why they're listed separately, right?
Yeah. Because he says, you give us joy and you give us pleasures forevermore, and they're not the same thing.
So then how do you think about joy? Because, in like common language, people use joy or happiness interchangeably. So if they're not necessarily the same thing, what is joy then? How would you differentiate it?
I don't know, but I sort of think of joy as like a bit of a state of being. Like it's not a fleeting thing. It's not something that you can get momentarily and then it's gone, like you would get from
Wow.
Yeah.
like something that you would get from like a fun experience, like a like you're on a roller coaster. When the roller coaster's over, like that feeling's gone. But I've sort of always thought of joy as being like a state of being. But
Yeah.
what do you guys reckon?
I was looking at what Luke was writing. I was going to point at it. That's why the water bottle projectile.
I know, it's like you just punched it across the table. I was like, wow, were you that engaged in what was being said?
No.
That took a left turn.
A left hook.
Yeah. Sorry, go
Yeah,
wherever you were going.
So Luke was writing down hope, and that's what I wrote on the board. Now I need to collect my thoughts. My thoughts are
That's all right. Collect them.
Violent now.
Take your moment.
okay. So we're talking about joy versus happiness. Yeah, and I think joy, or the joy that's described in the Bible, is inherently very much tied to hope, or like an expectation or a faith of the future and what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the value of that is that happiness is a pleasant feeling due to something that's happening. Right? Like happiness is like something is happening, someone threw you a party, someone gave you a gift, your loved one tells you that they love you. Like all of those things make you happy. But joy is something that can be had outside of that context, because the verse that I was thinking about with that is James. I just turned this up a minute ago. James 1 verse 2, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience.
Yeah.
But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him. And so it goes on there. But the point is, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. Trials are not conducive to happiness.
Yeah, and they're not exactly pleasures forevermore.
No, that's right. And so therefore the difference I think that's going on here is the joy that I have is it must be wedged much deeper than an experience. It can't be dependent on something that is current. It's dependent on something that you see in the future, that is coming. So if I know, or something in the past that has happened, right? And what I mean by that is my joy is anchored to what Jesus did for me a couple of thousand years ago, but it's also anchored to what he's working out in the future. Like, the plan of salvation, the fact that he's going to come back and he's going to set all this right, justice is going to be done, and like all of those things. If your joy is attached to all of those things, whatever happens in the middle is not going to disrupt it. It can't disrupt it.
Because like Emerson said, the verse, in your presence is fullness of joy, and God is faithful. Yeah. He continues with you through that. And he's very much separate from your circumstances. Yeah. So very good point. Cool stuff.
So I guess the next obvious question would be, to me, is how how do you cultivate joy then? Because I've met a lot of people who don't have joy in their life, right? So how do you go about accessing it if it's not dependent on current circumstance?
I feel like we touched on a couple of concepts, like the presence of the Lord, and then like looking at the past and looking towards the future.
So I was looking up a
you
verse.
were busy.
I was looking up a verse. I couldn't find it.
Sorry.
But what was the question?
I said, how do we cultivate joy? If joy is not dependent on something that's happening in the present, then how do we go about finding that? If someone is listening to this and going, man, I don't have that, how do you go about getting that?
I think you get it from being in the presence of God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what David meant when he said that joy is at your right hand. Like joy is in the presence of God. And if you, I sort of am talking from personal experience, but if you are in a strong relationship with Jesus, and you're plowing forward, you're going strong, it's all great, and the world can be falling apart all around you, you can still have joy. You can still feel great about it.
Yeah.
That's count it all joy when you're following various trials.
Yeah.
But
have you ever been? Sorry, so you finish.
I was just going to tell a bit of a story because I remember probably I don't know, one of the hardest years of my life would have been 2016, and my life was just in shambles. That was when I moved out of home and lost my license and gone through a bad relationship, and sort of everything was just falling apart. But I felt great. I was doing great, and I went to Thanksgiving. We had Thanksgiving, and we were all going around the table because half my family is American, so we did Thanksgiving. And everyone was talking about all of the things in their life that's going great that they're thankful for. And I was like, man, there's nothing in my life that's going great. But so literally the thing that I said that I was thankful for, I was like, I'm thankful to God that I'm so happy and I have so much joy, even though I have literally nothing to be thankful for at the moment. Yeah.
100%.
I mean, I had, great friends and family and people supporting me. So there was that, but yeah.
Yeah, something I hear a lot in like Christian circles. They say, I don't know how people without God could be like going through the same things that I am and like survive, because there's an element of that. Like to have joy in the midst of trial is just such a God thing.
Yeah.
Because without that, like, what are you looking at? You're like lost in despair. You don't have a hope or something to look forward to. But yeah.
The verse I was looking for that I couldn't find was the verse where it talks about the joy that surpasses all understanding. Does anyone know where that is?
Is that peace that surpasses all understanding?
Is it peace? Maybe it's peace that surpasses
that
all
up again in a
understanding.
few weeks.
But it's sort of like the similar concept. It's like, this person is at complete peace, and I can't understand how they could be at peace.
Totally.
Yeah, it is peace. That's why I couldn't find it. I was misquoting it in my head. Yeah.
So like the main question was, how do you cultivate that? When you were going through that time in your life, were there like things you were doing you could tie back to it, just like to make it really practical? Or just sitting in the presence of God? And Emerson was like,
praying
this is cool.
and reading my Bible and witnessing.
It's simple.
It's funny. It doesn't take much.
No.
It really does.
Pretty simple.
I just sit in silence for like 10 minutes just with God, and I'm like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, it is great.
Yeah, how do you keep your brain in one spot?
Yeah, I can
like,
pray for about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
I set a time. I started a thing where I like open my window, and it's like, because then it's like Daniel praying to Azuna, and then like I lie on my face, and then I just set a time. I'm like, this is 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I just sit there, and if I have nothing to like think about or say, it's just silence, and it's still really joyful in there.
The only place that I can find where I can pray for a long time is while I'm driving, and I have to pray out loud.
Yeah.
It has to be out loud.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
We understand.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's right. I walk and pray.
Yep.
And so like
Yeah,
I'll go for a walk
that
in the
works.
bush and talk out loud.
Yeah.
I have to write it.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. That's yes.
Writing is so
Writing is
it's
good.
so much clarity
Yep.
for any. Yeah, I love.
It is the
writing
same
stuff
thing.
down.
It's disciplined thinking. That's all writing is.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally.
It's
relate to
and
that.
I'm ADHD and dyslexic, so that's off the table as well.
Yeah.
Chris recently got diagnosed with ADHD. He's like, you should get tested, and I'm like, should I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
I'm
think
just
you should.
masking really hard.
I don't think it matters.
So,
Yeah, it does.
think
It doesn't matter. I mean, like some
I'm
people.
functioning how I'm functioning.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like we said in the episode, a couple
Yes.
episodes back, you know,
Call
like-
back to
call back to the
episodes.
neurodivergent episode that we
Watch
did.
that episode.
But yeah. So yeah, just to go back onto that point of joy and how that affects. Have you ever had somebody, either of you, had someone notice your joy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I work with worldly people, and they always pick up on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, I've had similar experiences, especially when I was younger and I was working, because like now I don't work with like in another company. I like work for my own company, and so the people I work with are people that are my team now, and so like I try to set the culture for that team. But when I was working for a boss when I was much younger, that was probably one of the key things that people would point out. They would actually make jokes about the fact that I was joyful and the others on the team weren't, you know, and it was really a weird thing because I thought that was so strange. When I remember because I was homeschooled, I didn't go to school. I didn't have a lot of those experiences. And so when I got a bit older, I went to TAFE and did a couple of certificates, but like in one of those circumstances, I was just being me, you know, I was just happy and, you know, and there was this one girl that I was talking to and she was like, you're just really weird. Like, it's just really strange. Like, and as the conversation progressed, she was like, I'm not happy. Like, I don't like myself. I don't like, and I said to her, like, is that, like, are you okay with that? Like, is that normal? And she's like, I don't know anyone. She pointed, like, she actioned, we were in a room full of people. She actioned all her friends and she's like, none of us do. And I was like, what? Yeah, exactly. I was just like, this is breaking my brain. How is that the normal? And that's not that she's a bad person. That's like, man, how much work has Satan done to break down culture, society, to make that the norm, you know?
Yeah. I had a similar experience when I first went into the workforce, and you know, I grew up in the church and went to a Christian school, and so I sort of had the same thing where I realized like, I think I've known like maybe 3 people in my life with depression.
Yep.
You know, and now like almost everyone I work with is depressed.
Yep.
Like, why is this such a big thing? Like, how is all of these people they're so sad? They just they have no joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think joy is one of those things that, well, I mean, this is the fruit of the Spirit. So there are all these things that sort of come naturally when you have the Spirit.
Yeah. That's right.
It comes naturally when you have the Spirit. It is a fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to a new friend of mine, Ari. If you're listening to this, he and I, we were having a great chat last night. We were studying the Bible together, and he was telling me about, and like, Ari, I think you would be happy for me to share this, but like since connecting with God, he was saying how different he's been thinking, and like the things that he wants to put in his mind, and like all of these things that have changed about his experience, and how much better it is with that connection, and like the fruit of the Spirit are just starting to flow in his life, and I was just so excited, you know. And Ari, if you're listening to this, I'm still super excited.
Ooh,
I was telling him, I said, look, if you were to like fly over here and hang out with my friends, you could meet them and they'd be like, oh yeah, we know you. Luke's already told us, because like I'm going around telling people, oh, this is so cool. Like I got this new
You're
friend.
the Bible study live stream guy.
yeah, live stream guy, the one I met on TikTok. So anyway, but I just love the fact that when people connect themselves to God, there is real, tangible things that happen.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not just
Seen it so many times.
Yeah, it's not just an idea or whatever. It's real. You know?
For some people, it is an idea. That's why Christians are so joyless.
I was talking to one of the guys at work,
Yeah.
telling me should come to church and try being a Christian because it's a great thing, and he was like, oh, but then I'd have to try and stop drinking. And I said, listen, if you started coming to church and you started to get to know Jesus, you'd just stop drinking. Like, you wouldn't have to try.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, what do you mean? Like, I'm addicted, I have all these addictions. I'm like, yeah, but like I've seen it happen before. enough
You
times
wouldn't be the first.
where
Yeah.
you don't like if you start cultivating that relationship with Christ. Like, I know people that just stopped, and then like 2 weeks later they've gone, "Hey, I haven't had a drink in like 2 weeks," you know. And it's sort of stuff like that, you know. And it's the Spirit changes you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like some people think they need to come to Jesus like joyful or like somewhere where they're not at. And it's like, no, Jesus, you meet Jesus where you're at, and then that's what changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Otherwise, what changes that? It's not very.
Yeah, it's got to come from the inside out, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and if it's not, then it's behavior modification, and it'll be there for a minute, but it doesn't stick.
You
It
meet
doesn't
people
stick.
like that try to like, oh no, how would you say it? Like a worldly joyfulness, but it's not really. It's like a. It feels very plastic. I
Yeah.
don't know.
That's good way of describing it.
Yeah.
you know? But okay, so let's talk about the uncomfortable question then.
Yes.
Why then are so many Christians the most joyless people that you're ever going to meet? Like, I mean, at least it looks that way, right? Like, I'm not judging any individual, but as I think about my experience in churches, there are some truly beautiful, joyful people, but there's also a lot of Christians out there. And there was a pastor I used to know who used to describe them as like being baptized in lemon juice. Like they
Come out scowling.
Yeah, they come out scowling. Exactly.
it's good to
Why is that so stereotypical for at least some segments of Christian churches?
I
It
reckon.
makes me think of the Pioneers Plod. Have you heard of the Pioneers Plod?
Ooh, tell us.
It's a Jehovah's Witness term.
No. Okay.
And we love the Jehovah's Witnesses. We've already shouted them out once, but they've got this thing that they call the Pioneers Plod. And it's where they walk in between the doors and they walk really slowly with their heads and their shoulders sort of slumped, like looking all sad because they have to. They have to do this thing, or they have to go from door to door and spread the gospel, but they don't want to be there, and so they walk really slowly between the doors, and it's sort of become a bit of a joke amongst them in their church, and they call it the Pioneers Plod.
Okay.
And it's sort of like if you see them coming up the driveway and they're like just plodding along and they don't look happy, like why would you be happy that they've come to your door if they're not happy that they've come to your door?
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And it's sort of like
I was
reminds me
saying
what
this,
your question was reminds me of that, like
Yeah.
the Pioneers Plod.
I was saying this to you guys a little bit earlier.
so sad.
I was watching watching a video that popped up for me this week, and it's totally secular content. But it was a lady. She was talking about how to have influence and effect on others, and she was saying that like if they can see in you that you are happy with your life, that you have that joy in you, they're going to be far more open to whatever you have to say, because whatever you have to say is clearly doing something for you.
Yeah.
And I thought about that, and I thought, I'm often happier or more joyful than I demonstrate. And the reason for that is because there is these social things, and like we're Australians, and Australians, we don't do exuberance very well, right? Like we are often more subdued, because if you come in with that kind of
Mellow
energy,
fellas.
yeah, sorry.
Mellow fellas.
Mellow fellas. Wow, that's interesting. But if you come in with that energy, people don't match it, right? Like it doesn't feel normal. It feels like you're drawing attention to yourself, and so like you tend to mute that down. But I started to think of the people I know that break that mold, and I think, how do I view those people? And I was like, I view those people really positively, because I feel like they lift me up to that level, and therefore they have more influence. And I thought, people could use that knowledge as a manipulation tool, but I think if we apply it in this context, that if you're connected to the Holy Spirit is filling you, the fruit of the Spirit is coming, and you are being naturally joyful, that becomes an attractive thing to the people that are around us. So from a missional perspective, from the perspective of telling people the good news about Jesus, joy is and should be considered an essential item on that list.
100%.
You can't fake it.
No.
You can't fake it. You cannot fake joy. I had a teacher in school that was she like was always acting joyful.
Yep.
And no one could stand her. She was like the most disliked teacher.
Yeah.
And she would always be smiling, like, "Hey, how are you guys?" And she would talk with a smile on all the time.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it's just uncomfortable. Like, oh, what are you doing?
feel it wasn't authentic.
It's just
Yeah.
so uncomfortable and just, ugh. But I met a lady, maybe 2 years ago, who was exactly the same. Always smiling, always talking with a smile, but it was a completely different thing because it was real. Like she was actually just thrilled with life, just full of joy. And I was like, this person's great. Like, I want to spend more time with this lady because she's just so happy. So joyful.
Sunshine.
Yeah, the sun was, literally, she was like glowing. The sun was shining out of her.
That's so cool.
And I thought, and when I met her, I was like, that's really weird because I met someone exactly like you, but had the complete opposite reaction from everybody she met. And that's when I realized, I'm like, oh, well, that was fake and this is real. You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just sparked it. Can I pull the conversation? I'm not sure if this is going to go, but you said the lady was like always smiling. It was like really forced. And I'm like, joy is, like we've established, it's definitely like an integral part of a Christian life because God himself is joyful. That's why it's the fruit of the Spirit and then it flows on. But then where is the place for sadness and sorrow? Because I feel like we're having the conversations we wish we could have at church. Where is that in a joyful Christian's life? I was not expecting to go this route.
No, it's good.
It's
good.
Great. It's the inverse.
But I reckon
It's sort of,
actually
we
really
went
good.
there last week with the inverse of love, so why not?
Where does sadness have a place?
I think you can be mourning and grieving whilst still having the joy there. Like I don't think
You don't
joy,
think it's the opposite?
I don't think that joy is something that leaves you when you're grieving. I think grieving and like what's the word I'm looking for? Sorrow. I think sorrow is the opposite of happiness, but I think depression is more of an opposite of joy. I think depression is more of a state of being. It's like nothing can make me happy, whereas joy is something is a state of being where nothing can make you sad. You know?
Yeah. Got it.
So like, you can grieve while still having the joy. Like if I don't know, have you ever been to like a Christian funeral where everyone is just like they're devastated that this person's passed away? But like the overall feel of the room is joy.
Yeah.
You know, like I've been to a few of those funerals.
I can.
It confused me a lot as a kid. But I think it sort of makes sense in that context of.
Well, I was just thinking, like one of the attached points, I guess. I was thinking one of the follow-up questions I was going to ask was Jesus joyful? And if, based on everything we've said, I think the obvious answer to that is yes. But then my follow-up to that was going to be, so why was he described as a man of sorrows? And I think that kind of hits it at your point, and that is they're not mutually exclusive. You don't necessarily have to have a life of unending happiness if you have a life of unending joy. Sorrow can come in there, but it's, what kind of sorrow is it? What's the sorrow for? How do we approach that? And so I guess the way I would look at it, and like I'm so grateful that, I haven't had lots of tragedy in my life. I've had, people who I've loved have passed away, but as yet, I thank God, like my parents are alive, my wife, my kids, those that are the closest to me, I have not had to deal with that loss as yet. But when I think about the hard times that I have had, whilst I have been sad, I've still had a really clear sense of God being in control. And because of that sense of him being in control, the joy was still present. Like I might have had to deal with what I was dealing with, but at no point did I feel like it was a lost cause. When Sarah was, when she almost died, and there's a lot of story there. Our regular listeners probably have heard me share that story in the past. But when that was going on, I was looking at myself, going, "Why aren't I totally why aren't I like fully broken down right now?" Because and I wasn't, and I I actually kind of felt bad in some cases for not being more, hurt by it. But I felt like, oh no, God's right here. Like I don't, whether this goes really well and she recovers, like, or she doesn't, like God's presence, and I often wish that I could go back to the feeling of God's presence without having to go through the suffering that's attached to it. You know what I mean? Because God is so much more real in those times where life is really heavy. But the joy was with me, and I don't credit myself with that. That's the Holy Spirit. That's what we're talking about. That's the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
I feel like we could make this episode about joy and peace. Because I'm listening to what you're saying there. I'm like, that sounds like peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they are closely linked.
Yeah, I think they are very closely linked. So peace is next week.
Yeah. Love, joy, peace.
But I think it'd be
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we just roll it all into one?
Should we just roll it into one?
Yeah, well, we can do that. We can do whatever we want.
We're adults.
Our listeners are going to be like, "Hello, is this AusTableTalk? Why did you do it once? I got cheated." So no, that's fine. Let's do peace.
Yeah, let's talk about peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that is a great segue, right? That when those bad things happen, the confidence in God's presence.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, and God's plan. You know, well, like recently my pop passed away, and like when I learned about it, I absolutely bawled my eyes out for, maybe 10, 15 minutes. But the whole time, but that was just mourning. I was mourning and I was sorrowful. But
which is healthy, by the way.
The peace and the joy never left. Similar to what you were saying.
Yeah.
And my first thought was, like, I'm so grateful for the time that I spent with him. And my second thought was, I'm so grateful that he was a man of God, and I have the confidence that I'm going to see him again.
Yeah. Hope.
And so there's, I think the confidence in who God is and the plan that he has really puts you at peace.
Yeah.
I think peace comes from that a lot.
I'm going to throw in a verse, which is joy and peace.
Yeah.
I Googled it. Romans chapter 15, verse 13. And it says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope."
So the reason that God gives us those things is for the purpose of filling us with hope.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And the God of hope. Yeah, one of the questions I put up there under is, why are Christians so joyless? Is God himself joyful?
Yeah.
Because I think that ties back to why are they joyless is because they don't know the God of joy in the first place. Because if you did, then
you would be.
That's where like good theology comes in. It's like, who is God really? Is God himself joyful? Because I would challenge that the people who don't have joy, who are supposedly knowing God, they have an idea of him that's not... How do I say not joyful without saying not joyful? I feel like that's a very perpetuated idea of God.
That he's super serious.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Very stern.
Yeah. Because when you think God, the first thing you think of is a joy.
Yeah.
Hey.
I know I had somebody say, and I mean, you guys have heard me preach. Like I'm not exactly I'm not a comedian, but if something's funny, I'll laugh at it, right? Like, and I don't go up and try to preach. And but there was a time I made a mistake while I was preaching, and it was funny. The people laughed. I wasn't trying to be funny, just to be clear, but it was like, oh, that was funny. But there was someone in the crowd that like, that's totally inappropriate. Like that's wrong. And I'm like, that's really clearly that's their picture of who God is, that God would be displeased by that. But from my understanding of God, like that was a mistake and it was a funny mistake. Like, why isn't it okay to acknowledge? And God gave us this response. It's a very natural human response. It's a thing, right? I think Jesus used humor. And so I think if we're looking for things that are good and healthy in the human psyche and how we relate to things, God is that too, right? And I think what you're saying here about you asking, is God joyful himself? I think for the people that don't see him that way, I think they are doing a great disservice to God himself, because they're I mentioned this idea earlier that they're kind of breaking the third commandment. They're not showing what God is truly like. The third commandment that we're taking God's name in vain. I mean, some people think that is, there's a few different ways that people
Don't
interpret
swear.
that. Don't swear or
Don't
whatever. That's
curse.
not the point. The point is that you take the name of God. You could say you're being called a Christian, but you don't act like it. Right? And I think that's what's being said. So if we're taking the name of God, we're saying we are Christians, we are followers of Jesus, and then we're going and acting in ways that are antithetical to his principles, we're taking his name in vain. And I think that people who are joyless Christians are doing precisely that.
Yeah.
It's
I'm sorry, that's harsh, I know.
the whole idea of penance. Like, I have to walk around and suffer, and the more that I suffer, the holier I become.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I was listening to Wes Huff, and he was saying that when they when certain people translated the Bible, they mistranslated the word repentance, and they translated it to the word penance.
Ooh.
And so they got this bad theological idea that, in order to get closer to God and be more Christ-like, we have to be penitent instead of repentant. And so then they started punishing themselves and torturing themselves. And it's like, I can't be happy, I can't be joyful. Happiness and joy is evil. It's sinful. And this idea has leaked into the culture of Christianity, and it needs to be extinguished. It's evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a deception, I believe.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
Yeah. Something that go.
No, you go.
Oh no, something you reminded me of was way back in high school.
You old person.
Yeah. So old.
Yeah.
See these wrinkles? No. They had basically a panel of some year 12s, and they were asking questions. And one of the questions is, do Christians have fun, or something like that? And the answers disappointed me so much.
Oh, really?
I was like, there was no mention of the joy of the Lord. They're like, yeah, props to them. They were doing their best of what the experience they knew, and obviously they answered best they could, or what they thought. But their answer was to the essence of, we don't smoke or drink, but we have fun apart from that. And that was it. That was the end of the
They're
answer.
basically saying that smoking and drinking is fun.
Yeah.
And even though we don't do it, we're still fun.
Exactly.
Terrible answer.
That's not an attractive view of the gospel or who God is. That's not. Yeah. There's something transcendent to all that. But yeah, something I'd love to touch on later on is how joy is transcendent and above emotions. We can mourn, we can grieve, we can even be happy and not have joy. But that kind of joy that's attached to hope, and because hope isn't who God is, how that's so much has so much to it. And
I would say happiness that does not have joy it's vacuous. It's
yes, there's no substance to it.
That's right. There's nothing to it, and that's
flavorless.
It's dangerous. I think
Vanilla.
That is a flavor.
No, vanilla's used to describe something that's bland.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
I know.
Doesn't make any
I
sense.
personally like vanilla.
Yeah. Anyway, we could get into the weeds about this, but yeah.
Back to bananas.
These new kids and their weird things that they say.
I don't think
now who's old?
Yeah.
Oh dang! I was going to say something too. It's gone. Anyway, move on.
Sorry. No, I was just we were connecting this onto peace.
Yeah.
Right? And I was thinking about, it's a very famous verse in Philippians, Philippians 4:6, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your request be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, that's the one you referenced earlier,
Right here, yep.
will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. So what wasn't meaning to steal that one
No,
from
it's
you.
all good. No, it's good.
Such a good
I only
verse.
had the one verse. You did more, so it was good.
Yeah. So, but the thing is here. What I was thinking about.
My question on this though
Yeah.
is joy an emotion, and is peace an emotion?
They have influence over emotions.
Yeah.
But I don't think they
Exactly. I don't think they're emotions. I think they're fruits of the Spirit.
Mm.
You know, I think emotions are something that we have built into us that we jump from this one to that one to that one to that one.
Yeah, I've
They're
got
chemical
mood swings all the
exchanges.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a female.
Yeah. I wasn't going to say that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Especially
But now
girls,
you've
they
said
jump between them in seconds.
Yeah.
So I've got daughters. It's
Yeah.
I understand it.
It happens. It's a thing.
But a fruit of the Spirit is something that comes from God. It's not something that we have.
Yep.
Like happiness is something that we have that we can go from being angry to happy to sad to. But a fruit of the Spirit is something that comes from God.
Dare I say it's like an anchor.
Yeah.
I was
So-
thinking that exact same word.
Yeah. Because the emotions are attached to the anchor. They're like the buoy that's attached to the anchor, but they can only move so far. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
that stops the sorrow from getting as far as despair,
Yes,
and it
yes.
stops the elation from getting to hysteria. But it anchors us to a place that we can always come back to. That's a
I
word
like
picture I
that.
like.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people misunderstand peace for silence. And you can say, oh, well, I have no relationship with Christ, but when I go fishing by myself and I'm out on the river and like I have peace. It's like, well, is that the same thing? Because I don't know that it is. I think that's just silence and stillness. But I think, how do I say this? I think peace is like the peace of God that transcends all understanding is not the same thing as the peace of fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Because you have it when you're not
Yes.
fishing. You have it when.
That's right, because when you're fishing, you understand why there's peace.
Yeah.
Because there's silence and there's stillness.
How about when everything's crazy?
How about when everything's crazy and
Yeah.
you're still at peace?
You don't understand. That's why.
That's
it
right.
transcends understanding.
Like what Luke was saying when your wife was dying and you were at peace. That transcends understanding.
Yeah.
Surpasses understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
And yeah. So I just wanted to, because I feel like people would say, Emerson said that peace only comes from God, but when I go
I get it
fishing,
from elsewhere.
I get it from fishing. And it's like, well, it's not exactly the same. It's not the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you could easily I think people misunderstand peace for stillness and silence. So,
Yeah.
I think just coming back here to verse 7. The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. So that peace is a protective measure.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting lens to look at it through, where we often think of it, oh yeah, it's a good state to be in. Peace is a healthy thing to have, but it actually protects us from something.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know, what would you say it protects us from?
Hopelessness.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
Yeah, because I feel like that really touches well with the anchor analogy. Like it's guarding you
Yes.
from going too far away from what is anchoring you. And if you go over into like despair, despondency,
Yep.
you can't see God clearly there because God is a God of hope. When you're in despair, you don't
Yeah.
see a future. You don't see how can I get out of this? How's God a good God?
Yeah.
Very
And
well
that's
said.
exactly where Satan wants to keep as many people as possible for as long as possible, right?
Yes,
Hopelessness.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I talked about that in prelims the other week.
Mm.
I bawled my eyes out.
It was powerful.
I remember that.
You were there for
I
that?
think so.
This
Well,
Sabbath.
was that this Sabbath? Oh, no, I wasn't there for that one.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But I was there at
You're
prelims
at
when you
Bush
cried one
Church.
time. Yeah.
Oh, that was the other prelims.
Yeah.
You're getting your reputation.
This happens
good.
a lot.
But honestly though, like it's when you cry, like I mean, often people feel like, oh, I cried. That's a bad thing. But like, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. If someone feels
Yeah.
what they're saying to the degree that they express emotion while they're saying it,
Yeah.
I'm going to remember that. The people
It
that get
adds
up,
credence to it as well.
yeah, oh, 100%.
Yeah.
The people that get up there and be like, oh, no, and I'm done, and go away. Like,
Yeah.
I admire the fact they had the courage to get up and do that. That's great. But I'm probably not going to remember it the next week when we're having a conversation here, right? It's not
Absolutely.
going to have that response for me. So I appreciate you.
Sorry, can I take that idea for a second?
Go.
The fact that emotions are memorable and emotions make us, they attach us to other humans because it has something to it. And emotions aren't bad. Emotions are things we go through, but obviously there's higher things that anchor us. But I think that, what's the point I'm trying to go with this? The point is that the emotions that we go through it with God. There was a podcast I was listening to probably months back with the Perrys. Shout out to...
Why did I know it was going to be the Perrys?
Of course it's going to be the Perrys. Yeah, I think it was called The Art of Lament, which it was a beautiful episode. And it was basically going, lament isn't talked about enough, and how lament can actually be a form of worship when done with God, because it's bringing your emotions, all these visceral things, the realness of you, the rawness of you, and giving it up to the Lord and saying, Lord, the situation isn't good, but I know you are. Help me. And then coming through that. But yeah, I don't know where that came from or where this is going, but that's that.
Yeah, but it
comes down to trust, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. So we said that we're combining this episode, joy and peace. So maybe is there anything else that's related to peace? Because we didn't have as much time to think about that part of this discussion. So is there anything else?
I don't know. I just think that a lot of the things that we said about joy
is also true.
Were actually maybe even just peace.
Okay.
So that's why I said, well, let's just merge the two.
Yeah.
And everything that we talk about, the audience can decide whether it's joy or peace.
Yeah, let us know.
Or both.
Yeah.
I think they very much go hand in hand. I don't think they're the same thing, but I think they very much go hand in hand.
What do you reckon separates them? Sorry, big question. Just because I don't have an answer.
That is a good question.
Because we've defined that they're separate from emotions, but the thing that defines them is like one is like happy and one is like kind of still. So definition.
Are they just like levels of amplitude, right? Like is
I don't know what that means. What's
like as in like joy is just like it's okay, connection to God. Joy is the positive emotion. Peace is like the neutral emotion, but like they're still doing the same thing. Yeah. They're still protecting our heart. They're still doing the thing that the anchor was doing that we were saying before. They're just different states within that safety realm of safety.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I like that.
I think you could equate peace with trust. And you could equate joy with obviously happiness, or euphoria. I think euphoria is a good word to describe joy, because it's you're in this place of just I'm just filled with this great feeling. It's euphoric. And peace I would equate with trust, because the peace of God comes from trust in God, I would say. If you trust in God, I just said this before, but I'll say it again. If you trust in God, in who He is and the plan that He has, then you're going to be at peace with whatever happens. Yeah.
I just thought of a verse. I just hunted it up. It's John chapter 16. Jesus is talking, and He says, "These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." And I think that's kind of what we're describing here about both peace and joy to an extent, but it's talking about peace specifically in the text. So there we have peace, but we're having peace in the midst of tribulation, right? He's not saying you'll have peace and you'll also have, like, later you'll have tribulation. He's saying you'll have tribulation, but in the midst of that you will have peace. And
I was actually thinking about this a lot when I was planning for this episode, but then I realized it was about peace, so I'm like, I'll do it next week.
Yeah.
But I've said this to people that I work with a few times, where I say, because they're like, but the world's terrible and even Christians don't have it better than us. Like, why would I become a Christian when you don't have it better? And I say, God promises Christians two things. He promises us tribulations. He promises us hard times. He promises us trials. But He also promises us peace in the midst of it. And He says, fear not, for I have overcome the world. Like you're in the world and you're suffering because of the world. But the world doesn't even matter because I've already beaten it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah, I was looking at...
And that gives you peace.
100%. Yeah, I was looking at the definition of peace, and it says freedom from disturbance, tranquility. And I think that's it. Because we are in a different plane of... How do I put this? We obviously have that hope, but thoughts are not thoughting. I can do this.
You can.
I am strong and capable.
You've got this.
I do. What was the point I wanted to make? I was holding it there in the back of my head while I was just like, I'm like, I'll listen.
Yeah.
It's there, and then I'll come back to it. It's not coming back. But yeah, the essence of it, I'm thinking, was that Christians are in a different plane of experience. Like there's the world and then there's us, which we have a heavenly hope. And with that, we aren't disturbed by the things in the lower plane. Like things that are circumstantial, those don't affect us. Those don't register as disturbances because that's not ours. Yep. We have something that's solid and something to hope for.
Yeah. Almost like if I'm catching what you're saying rightly, it's almost like there's when we are connected with God, we are aware of the spiritual realities, and the temporal realities don't. It's not that they don't bother us, but they don't have the same level of control.
They don't have that hold. Yeah.
They
Like what can
small.
man do to me?
Yeah.
They seem small. I like that. So it's relative, right? Like it's like when you're young and you know, I'm sure we've all had that experience when we were kids where there's like a massive problem and you think like this is like a world-ending issue, and then you turn like 21 and then you think, wow, that really wasn't that big a deal. You know, like it's all context, right? It's all relative.
Yeah.
And so I think that's it. When we're connected with God, we have the capacity to then look at what's going on and be like, yeah, well, does that really matter that much? You know,
It comes down to responsibility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The more responsibilities you have, the more you're gonna stress. And if you don't have Christ in your life, then you are responsible 100% for how good your life is. But when you have Christ, you understand that, oh no, he's done all of the hard work, and my salvation is sure. And it really takes a lot of responsibility off of you, doesn't it? It takes a lot of responsibility away from us, which I think gives us peace. Because, like as you were saying, the older we get, you know, you're a kid and it's like, oh, you're not responsible for a whole lot, but you got to do your homework, and that stresses you out because that's your one responsibility, and you got to do the dishes, right? And it's like, and then you get a car, and now you got rego, and then you get a job, and now you got taxes, and then you have kids, and don't even get me started, right? The amount of responsibility, and the further along you get, the more responsibility, the more chaotic, and the less peace you have.
But the more the responsibility goes up, the more good you're putting in the world, right? And there's that confidence of like, God's putting me here, you know, to participate in this, and you can still have the peace amongst the chaos.
But it's been this thing going around on social media a lot, in the dad sphere of like,
you're in Dadstagram, are you?
Where people keep saying this thing like, men just want peace. Like above all else, a man just wants to come home and have peace at home. And that's the number one thing that men care about. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. But that's not the same. That's not the right kind of peace. Like you're talking about like, oh, I want to get home and I want my wife to bring me, you know, a nice peach iced tea, and I want to put my feet up, and my kids to leave me alone. And so I'm like, you guys are misunderstanding what peace is. You know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Good, because no one gets that. Yeah. No, not to devalue it. Yeah, it's a great point. Do you guys have? I feel like we've gone a lot of places. Do you guys
Yeah.
have anything specific that you'd like to hit on before we finish?
Just
think-
like rounding it off.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever like we talk about things, I love bringing it back to God's character
Yeah.
and who He is, because we have these discussions to understand God and to develop good theology.
Yes.
It's like Sabbath school last week.
Yeah, I was going to say. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
getting some echoes of Sabbath. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah.
So God is joyful.
Mm.
God wants us to be joyful. God brings peace. God is a God of hope.
Mm.
And that is, I feel like people don't find that tangible, but it is.
Mm.
But yeah.
Yeah. And by participating in that, it's not only in our best interest, but it vindicates the character of God in the process.
100%. Yeah. Because He is a good God.
Yeah.
And we hang on to that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. This has been great. And we look forward to fruit number 3 with you guys next week.
4.
4. Yes.
cover
We
two.
did 2.
Because we mashed them.
That's right. We mashed
Yeah.
them.
We had a banana, blueberry.
We had a fruit salad.
Mashed salad.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Delicious.
Sorry to correct.
No, that's fine. Let's just end it there.
Nice.
See you guys.
Kill it, Cody.